Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're actually going to be making alterations to a store-bought pattern. There's going to be a lot of information in this video about fitting problems, so let's do it. Store-bought patterns are great for taking all the guesswork out of recreating your favorite garment from scratch, but they don't always address fitting issues such as armpits being too low, shirt blouses being too tight, even how to recreate your favorite pair of pants without that pucker in the crotch or the waistband being too high or too low. A lot of these fitting issues can actually be addressed by making small alterations to your pattern before recreating your garment, which is a whole nother video within itself. First things first, I want to talk to you about the form. I actually really highly suggest using a dress form. Doesn't matter what kind you use either. You could use a full body dress form, you can use a bust, you can use the dress forms that adjust. There's even vintage dress forms that you could still purchase on the market if you find one. And then of course there's the growing popular method that is inexpensive and fun, and that's duct taping the crap out of your friend and then taking the duct tape off and actually filling the center of the duct tape form with some kind of expanding foam, whether it be something that you buy from Lowe's or something a little bit more intense from like Smooth On. My personal method is to take my adjustable dress form, and I've actually made a spandex stocking that fits over the top of it, and I use body patterns. Some of them are store-bought and some of them I've made, but it just seems to really work out for my purposes. Okay, so we're going to get into altering my store-bought pattern, and I'll get into the why a little bit later. This is pattern B6339 by Butterick, and as you can see by the finished pictures, this vest is not sexy. There are so many fit issues on this, like
the lapel, the waistband, the armpits, the fabric, the pockets, everything. Oh, I digress.
Okay, so this pattern is supposed to look like this handsome gentleman. Obviously, it's a different pattern, but mine did not turn out that way. So what I'm going to do in this video is I am actually going to alter this pattern to fit my client's specific measurements, and I am going to address some of the fit issues that I had when I recreated this garment from this pattern without any alterations first. So the first thing I'm actually going to do, which you can see me doing here, is I'm taking a glue stick and the pattern piece, and I'm just simply gluing this down to a piece of poster board. And what this basically is going to do is it's going to preserve my pattern, and it is also going to make it so I can actually hang this pattern up in my closet. And I'll have to show you guys how I preserve and save all my patterns, but it's kind of like they do in a professional stance where I have everything hanging up in my closet in a nice little row, so that way I can find all my pattern pieces when I need them. But basically what I'm doing here is I'm just gluing down the pattern pieces to this cardboard before I make out all of the notes on the pattern of what I want changed. Probably the biggest concern that I had with this pattern was it was not true to size what it said on the packaging. As I stated before, there's a lot of different ways that you can achieve changing and altering your pattern. You could actually change your pattern without doing this step, but because I want to be able to come back and use this pattern again in the future, I want to make sure that it's not going to just end up in a wrinkled ball and end up throwing it away like I have done so many patterns before. And if you've ever used a pattern like this, then you know the struggle's real. The one thing I found with laying out these patterns is that if I use a ruler to actually smooth out the pattern while it's on the cardboard, or use the side of the glue like I am right here, that it makes it a lot easier to just kind of lay down pretty flat, and then you don't get any puckers or anything like that that's going to distort your pattern piece too much. And I also found that with this glue stick I'm using, it's just a regular Elmer's glue stick, that if I go over the top of the pattern after it's already on the poster board and I glue over the top of some areas, after that glue dries, it will not be tacky. And that really helps, I guess, kind of strengthen the top of the pattern piece too. But I did also notice that after I put this glue on the back of this pattern, it did make these patterns really fragile. Like you'll see a couple areas right here where the pattern just tore really easily on me. And hence, this is the reason why I prefer to go through and make all of my patterns from scratch, is just for this issue. Because the whole reason I'm making this video for you guys is because I wanted to show you guys how I made the Jack Nicholson Joker vest for part of this cosplay series. And I made the vest, and I was absolutely horrified when I got done and I realized that it looked nothing like it did in the picture. And I followed all the rules, and I mean, you know, after 30 years of being a seamstress, I would say I know patterns pretty well. And there was just a lot of fit issues that just were, it made it kind of a real miss for me. And that vest will not go to waste, though. I will end up donating that to charity or finding a friend or a new home for it. But it will not go in the garbage can. So the biggest fit issue that I did see with that vest was the lapels were way too big. And you can see both these pattern pieces I'm working with right here are the lapel, and it's got an under and an over. And for me personally, and like I said, you know, this is not with everyone. This is Sick Clothing. This is Susie. This is my years and years of mad methods. But I've always found that having an under and an over does not really suit the cause unless you're actually making something that's more like couture. And I think it also does depend on the fabric that you're using as well. I think if you're using a very lighter weight or a more shifty type of fabric, like a woven type of fabric, then you definitely would want to have that upper and lower lapel. But you'll actually see later on this video that I actually buy having both upper and lower lapel pieces, just because they're the type of fabric that I'm using, and there's some sewing techniques that I will show you in the Joker vest, like the actual making of the Joker vest tutorial. There are certain techniques that I could use that will get the same outcome without having to have that extra piece. And the whole reason they have an upper and a lower is because they want the upper to sit up more proud off the chest and to be kind of curled over the edges. If the back of it is a little bit smaller, then you'll only see the front part, and it's supposed to lay properly on the body. However, I did not find that with this pattern. And I'm spending way too much time on this lapel piece. I don't know why, because like I said, later I just end up scrapping it anyway. But I figured I'd show you guys one of my methods just so you can kind of see where my mind frame is from. Or think I'm a lot crazier than I am. So I'm going to go ahead and let those dry for an hour before I decide to come in and cut them out. Basically what I do is I come in with a Sharpie and I just start straightening out my edges, and I start making my alterations to the patterns. Now, one thing I do want to point out is if you're making an alteration to a pattern piece that has a conjoining pattern piece, like the sides of the pattern, like this vest does not sit directly on the side of the body. The side of this actually sits more toward the back. So if I were to make alterations, I'd actually have to cut through the pattern. Another pattern issue I had was with this piece right here, which is part of the welt, like the welted pocket. And I noticed that even in the instructions and even with their seam allowance, that it didn't fit in the spot that's marked on the front of the vest that it should have. And it made it way too big, and I actually ended up having to make the front side of that vest on one of the front sides like 2 times, which is really kind of weird. But you'll see right here, I'm reshaping the lapel. As you can see, that's just horrible. The lapels are way too big. I would imagine that if you were not looking for something screen accurate, like as far as a costume where it's based around one specific character, and if you were just looking for something that was kind of vintage, like this pattern advertises, then yeah, this would be a great look. But for the sake of this video and being a costume, it just didn't work out. And then after I made the alterations to one side of the lapel, I kept, putting it up against the other side. And I was thinking, okay, so I'm going to have to take off like maybe about 1/4 of an inch of the under, so that way I could, it'd coincide with the over. And the more I started thinking about it and the classes that I have taken over the years, I just finally decided, I'm just going to bypass using the upper and lower lapel and make it easier. And this pattern didn't call for any interfacing in the belts, and they were just way too flimsy without the interfacing in it, so I definitely would change that. And then right here I'm showing you see how the welt goes from the whole side of one pattern to the whole side of the other pattern? It is not supposed to do that. And the welt actually looked a little bit too big. I understand that this is a guy's garment, but the finished piece, like I said, it looked really good, but there was just a couple of things that I wasn't too terribly happy with. So, and you might call it picky or whatever, but this is, part of what I pride my company on is making sure that everything looks and behaves the way that would make my clients happy. So if that means remaking a garment 2 or 3 times to figure out where I went wrong in recreating it, then gotta do what you gotta do. Anyway, so I have busted out my X-Acto knife instead of my hole punch because I'm lazy. And I'm just cutting out like the little corners where the welt's supposed to go, and then cutting out the holes where the little darts are supposed to begin. And this actually helps too. So when you go to recreate any kind of pattern and you have to chalk through to like show like guidelines or something like that, then you could chalk through it a lot easier instead of having to pick your pattern up and put it back down. I just usually just cut out a hole. And then I've got my professional pattern maker notcher. And you can actually find these on like eBay or Waywax sewing supplies. And they are so handy to have, just to even like to mark out like instead of doing the notch where it's like a little diamond on the outside of the pattern. In the industry, we actually just notch them. And I know I'm speeding up and going through a whole lot of this process, but it is a lot of the same tedious type of stuff. Basically what I've done is I've taken out a little bit of fabric out of the back of the pattern. I've readjusted the lapel. I am going to go through and raise the armpit just ever so slightly. I've made alterations to the welts and the pocket. And the front of the jacket I'm actually making a little bit more slim fit. And so I hope you guys learned something from this. If you did have any other questions, definitely leave them in the comment section below. And don't forget to keep your eyes peeled for the making of this Joker vest. And just remember, There is no right and wrong way in being creative. You are bound only by the limitations of your imagination. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Follow me on all other social media, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.